Hey everyone, welcome to this session of Women Who Code 2021. This is going to be a chill talk about exploring the next generation of developers and how the evolution of tooling really affects us. So my name is Sydney Lai and I build web and mobile applications on the enterprise level. Specifically, I love playing with experimental projects. Last year, I spoke at Women Who Code specifically on how to build an Ethereum wallet. So if you want to check out how to do that step by step, feel free to join you and your friends at the Women Who Code YouTube channel. And you can find that technical demo. It's a pretty long video, so enjoy that one, have fun. Today, we're gonna cover three main things, what you're gonna learn. Number one is what I look for in a great developer tool. Number two is the evolution of tooling. And number three is the AI-assisted programming approach that a lot of dev platforms are helping us as devs do. So we all start our developer journey from different places, especially as programming education has continued to democratize our access to becoming a developer. And in the next 15 minutes, it's not a code lab, it's a little bit of a technical deep dive. But the main focus of the message is on a macro level to provide insights onto like what is to come and what's already here. So it's really for devs to better understand like how tooling may change our career paths into different types of developers. And here's some examples of tools that you would use depending on what kind of dev you are. This is overly simplified, but I will say that I definitely remember on how I got started. So if you guys remember like Square monitors were crazy because I remember staring at them for so long building on GeoCities. And this really helped democratize the access for people to build their own websites. I didn't know any programming languages in primary school, but this did help me understand HTML. And without a doubt, MySpace, it was just like the gateway to another like way of understanding how to write code, right? So in 2008, there was like 115 million unique users. And this helped you learn the basics of front-end scripting. So much so that the MySpace profile editor was freeform enough to allow any kind of like inline style attributes, tables, embedded widgets, even Flash. Oh my gosh, Flash. But taking advantage of this freedom was only possible with like rudimentary understanding of HTML. And it was just so awesome to flex your sites. But this with GeoCities and MySpace, this really led me to learning how to program, how to code. It brought me to learn development on a game engine. Like that was really my first like I guess you could call, developer IDE, because it had pre-built libraries. You could drag and drop your builds. And there was three main things that I learned. I guess my first step as a developer. One was understanding libraries and integrating extensions. Number two was scripting and the fundamentals of C#. And then of course, three was like developing, debugging, deploying your application. And in this case, it was a game. And this led me to going to hackathons where I gained a lot of exposure to what people were building, but more importantly, what tools they were building with. Because all these tools that I've learned, it helped and guided me to other career paths, other roles, other responsibilities, where it ultimately led me to leading a technical team at a satellite startup where we were building mission control applications that allowed our satellites to speak to our spacecraft. And it was primarily built in C++ and Java. So what am I looking for personally in a developer tool? There's three main things that I look for when it comes to like adopting tools that I want to use and improving my career, right? So number one is consensus. Is everyone agreeing to using this tool or these processes? Because I don't want to be the only person here writing COBOL, because people still write in COBOL, but the consensus is that the language is phased out for modern web development. As an example, not relevant. Number two is the user experience. When I came across Docker in 2014, it blew my mind in terms of how you manage your containers. The experience for me was awesome, as Docker made it so much easier to manage my containers as a full stack web dev, whereas the skill set was primarily, previously only for DevOps engineers. Right. And then number three, I really care about the declarative nature of the programming tool language platform, because it's important to me as a dev tool the dev tool has a declarative approach as it's intuitive and more streamlined. So the imperative approach is concerned with how you're actually going to get a seat at the table in this example, which reminds me of like C# or Java. You need to list out the steps to be able to show how you're going to get a table. The declarative approach is more of like, what do you want? A table for two. So the declarative nature is more broad in the sense, kind of reminds me of like SQL, but really any kind of modern development platform that gives you the output of what you really want. So what I just walked you through is just one narrative as a millennial developer, but there are others on my team that have learned in completely different ways because they're of different generations, which this leads me to think about the next generation of developers, Gen Z. So here is Roblox. Has anyone heard of it? Let me know. I mean, if you haven't, that's okay. I'd say 164 million children have. Roblox has their own library, their own marketplace, if you don't want to build your own from the developer console. And this reminds me of my Unity days. So do you see the onboarding process of early baby devs in training? You can see that, a lot of kids also, after Roblox, they also move on to Minecraft. And high schoolers and college students or other Gen Z are rapidly adopting other developer platforms. Most people think of Shopify as like an e-commerce platform to sell your fidget spinners. But for Shopify Liquid, which is their programming language, you need to know C++, PHP, JS, any kind of basic language to learn to code in Shopify Liquid. Also, basic platform integration knowledge on like maximizing API capabilities, which a lot of non-technical people don't know how to do. So like you're a platform developer, AKA in this case, a Shopify developer, marketplaces need to be built. There is demand, and the demand you can see here with the flex, there's monetary demand, there's talent demand. The point I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of developer paths beyond traditional full stack roles, and it's important to find your fit. If I met a dev, I'm trying to think. I met a dev the other day who specializes in cybersecurity. And I'll let you know that like most devs don't even know those specific programming skill sets, right? I'm tangenting. But as a developer platform, Shopify knows that their next generation of developers are coming from like they know where they're coming from, and they will continue to train them up and provide scholarships to do so. So as I mentioned, there's different types of toolings, frameworks for devs, and to really understand that, it's to understand the evolution of programming and dev tools. And it's because application development is super hard. There is different stacks, many languages for different types of developers. Even the binary system that was later used for modern programming was created in the 17th century. So my personal first language and framework that I learned was Ruby on Rails. It was popular 2011, 2014, especially with Twitter. It's not as popular anymore, but knowing the programming logic is almost more important than being God mode in a specific language. So DevTools really allows we, the developers, to extend our skill set and leverage our builds with scale. So it's really about saving time and the exponential ability to develop. So even with Stripe, it allowed devs to easily implement their applications with a payment integration platform. Whereas historically, you'd have to build this from scratch. And even back in the day, in the early 2000s, here's an example of like testing an API where you'd call the SOAP and look at the XML in the browser. But now you have Postman. And like, has anyone built APIs with Postman? It's super sick. You no longer have to build an API line by line. It just allows for rapid integration and builds. And very similar to Postman, I started to gravitate towards IDEs that would allow me to build and scale. Mind you, especially on the enterprise level, it's a scale and a challenge that was very different than building in a startup. So this provided me a holistic approach of building end to end. And so now we're moving towards automation and removing tedious tasks. And this brings us to the context of AI in general, especially in developer tools, where I'd say like ML plays a role in developer platforms is specifically, like I'm specifically interested in how the predictive modeling aspect works, even taking a step back into pattern recognition. So knowing regular expressions in Python can mean the difference between solving a problem in 3 steps or solving a problem in 3,000 steps. So here I am, I'm telling the program to catch the patterns and predict a US phone number. Is phone number function is 17 lines, but you can only find one pattern phone number. So like what happens if you have a phone number that's formatted with periods instead of hyphens? What if there's an extension number? What if the function fails to validate them? The regular expressions can be much more sophisticated. So over here we have this like, it's called Kite, right? I really am a huge fan of this. From the right side, the right side is the manual side, and then the left side is the ML. With the Kite integration, their natural language learning allows you, like, the natural language knows the context and will suggest a fitting syntax as an example. This reminds me of Grammarly, right? So where they take the context of your sentences and based on the grammar and spelling provides you corrections in your syntax. So that's what Kite is. It understands the intent in your Python and it will autofill and help you program your Python faster. As an example. So if you use Grammarly, that doesn't mean you're like bad at English, right? It doesn't make you less of a writer. It just helps you catch some of your structures, your grammars, your errors, your syntaxes, really. And there's even like APIs that document and test themselves. This one's called Optic. It brings smart code generation to your favorite IDE because really like writing and updating API specifications should be as easy as a Git commit, but contract testing your APIs should not be your full-time job. So the Git version control and on the right-hand side is translating into Optic's version behavior. So when it comes to dev tools using ML, here you can see, VS Code is most well loved. So I personally appreciate any kind of linting integration. It knows that this defined post syntax is incorrect, this highlighted piece here. However, it doesn't know what specifically or why, it just knows that it's incorrect. But as you can see here, once the linting catches my error, as the programmer, I know that there's a missing if statement as an example. This is a bit longer, so I won't dive too deep into this, but for the most part, dev tools are experiencing right now is that the dev tools that you experience, is the IDE, it's the front end, and that's by design. So here on the back end, it's the supervised learning model where the dev tool learns the context of what you are building. So the prediction model shows that these decisions are made on the server. So the client requesting predictions and the orchestrator are creating and updating the models. And so as a quick example, in the middle, you will see the entry point or the orchestrator is at the core of the ML system that interacts with, it orchestrates the workflow, essentially. A great example is Lecce.js. It's an engine. It's a peer-to-peer, like self-improving AI that can write, debug, analyze, improve, and understand both design and code. So it aims to develop total automation through AI and ML techniques in every possible way. So this definitely reminds me of Jarvis, running Stark Industries. So I'll give a quick case study for myself. Our main focus as a team building dev platforms is on the logic side. So this is what we really care about as a dev tool is the AI development. Because we want to remove a lot of like tedious work and that can like provide and implement that predictive model. So where we've not gone is the whole pattern being generated itself, kind of like Jarvis. So we really focus on working on removing the manual repetitive tasks and moving towards the next generation of assistants. So here's the case study pulled from the Ethereum wallet build that you can watch the video in Women Who Code YouTube channel. You can see here the example build here where I built an Ethereum wallet. You can visually see the logic flow of a blockchain transaction where I am sending the token transaction to another ledger. And on the logic side, you can take out the tedious work. There's an autofill, which eliminates the analysis paralysis because the logic flow of this platform understands the intent and sentiment. And because of that, it contextually recognizes what you're trying to pull. So it will ask you, hey, you're sending a token to another ledger. Do you want to focus your next steps on the server itself, right? So once again, here is automation. So the logic flow knows you are speaking and that you want to translate that voice to text, because you're sending a voice note to your abuelita in Paraguay. So gosh, we just ran through this really quickly. Like, what are the takeaway messages, right? I kind of went over the three, but basically, it's like developer tools and platforms accelerate our production cycle. So upcoming tooling have really changed the nature of what kind of developers we are. So here's an example where it's like you're making popcorn on the stove. You can also still make popcorn in the microwave. Both are very different vibes, but you will still get the end result that was frictionless and flawless. And I say this because the other day I was making popcorn and I messed up the temperature on the stove and the compression of the steam air inside the pot. So AKA I broke my code and I was unable to deploy my popcorn to the end user, AKA my mouth. And it was devastating. So like I said, there's just different types of developers using different types of tooling. And it kind of depends on like what track you're looking to go, right? And so three things that I really wanted to share today was just like, what do I look for in a great developer tool? Walking you through the evolution of tooling. And of course, is understanding where dev tools are going, which is significant like AI assisted programming. As always, my name is Sydney Lai. Truly, 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 if you need any mentorship or if you have any questions or help, even after today's session, you can DM me. My DMs are open. I can assist you in any way. If I'm not the right person, I'll help find the right mentor for you or the right peer programmer or whatever works. You can feel free to join our community of developers. We're about 400,000, and we're specifically focused on this developer platform where you can build web and mobile applications. And you can also download it. The pro devs, it's free. There's a free lifetime version. Check it out. Thank you so much. And I'm going to stick around for any kind of Q&As as well.